It's women can't take it. Women are not equal to men. We can't hold them accountable. We can't rely on them to do stuff when it's hard. No, that's not feminism. That is, I don't know what that is.
Never contacted her at all.
And she couldn't not write the piece. Victims do not like to wave a red flag in front of their abuser's face, especially when they are much more powerful in the industry.
Maybe an expert opinion. I'm not sure if. I mean, you're not really an. I mean, you're not really a social media expert, but you are. You do have an in-depth.
I actually do social engineering for a cybersecurity company. So, yeah.
Now that I did not expect. Cool. Cool.
Yeah, medical software. So yeah, can't talk about the details, but yeah, I do online social engineering. That's something I do follow. That's why, the social media stuff on this has been wild.
Wait. Before we actually get into that, what is online social engineering?
Social engineering is unlike like you go in and hack code. You hack people. So, some of the stuff that in the Depp Heard trial is they claim that it was inauthentic online activity.
Okay.
And most people have a really pedestrian view of what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And, the big frontier now is there's a bunch of, contract people in Estonia setting up all these bots to boost engagement on something. The Depp Heard kerfuffle is perfect for certain foreign state actors to undermine the West in terms of a free press and democracy is not the best way to go. Look at how awful everything is. And most likely what we see, because I know that was a thing where it was, they were pro-Depp, they were pro-Heard. In my experience, they tend to go at both sides because what they want is the conflict. They don't care who wins, right? It's like Godzilla versus Mothra in a big kaiju fight. You don't care who wins as long as a bunch of stuff gets wrecked. The idea is to undermine the idea of jury trials of people's peers in this case. And let's face it, they did that really, really well. Jury trials are, the whole point of a jury trial is that you are judged by your peers. Yeah. And the problem with a celebrity case of any kind is you can't say regular people who have to take their time off work to do a case like this are the peers of somebody like Amber Heard, Johnny Depp, or Donald Trump. E. Jean Carroll, people don't know her name recognition the same way. Right. She is in the media, but she doesn't have that, was in Aquaman or has a major franchise behind them. Right. Yeah. And none of this stuff is bench line. There is no precedent set by these trials. This does not mean it's easier or harder than Joe or Jane Blow off the street to be believed or get justice. These are freak shows, right? And I know that's a charged word, but that was the appeal. The reason we were all glued to it was so, this is real, this is life, this is happening, right? And it felt important, but not in an earth-shattering way. Nobody was going to go to jail. No one was going to have their rights taken away. It was a big, almost like watching Game of Thrones, only we could see all of it. There were no cuts. There were no edits. We could see the entire trial. And, trials of the century, going back to the yellow journalism of the 1930s and the Fatty Arbuckle case and all that stuff, have captivated the public consciousness. The particulars of this one were especially fire because you had a superstar, right? Troubled past. I remember when he trashed that hotel room, when he was seeing Winona Ryder and the whole Kate Moss thing and all the rumors and all that stuff. He's been open about his struggles with substances for a really long time. We can get into the mental health and addiction stigma later, right? With the dog thing, with the brawl in Australia. And there was this drip, drip, drip. And they did that weird video apologizing for the dog thing. And then there was the domestic abuse stuff. And then it all went away. And it all happened in public. And what happens there is people feel like they have enough information to form an opinion. And that validates the viewer in an era where people are desperately seeking validation for things. That's why I think it caught fire. I'm a peer counselor on top. I wear a lot of hats, but the number of men, because my business is 90% men because of the gaming thing, but the number of men who talked about their own experiences with an abusive straight partner, it was unbelievable to me. And then the number of women who saw themselves in certain, the text messages, the burn the witch stuff, we can talk about that, but I understand why people saw their own situations in that. And so they became very invested in the outcome. And that's what made me worried, because a jury trial is about a specific set of facts, not Me Too, not the narrative, not women being believed. It's a trial. It's preponderance of evidence. So who do you believe more? And it was a basic set of facts with particular events and two particular people. And my big concern, the big failing, was the fact that the press took that and made it into a larger narrative. Even if she lied, this sets back Me Too. Wrong. No, that's unnecessarily scaring people on all sides.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why? You did mention your history a little bit there of you being a counselor. I was literally going to ask you, who are you? Like,
yeah, we just sort of hit the ground running, right?
No, I like that. I like the momentum that's been built up. But
my name's Liana Kerzner, sometimes known as Liana K, sometimes known as Red Liana K. You'll notice from my background, I do a lot of nerd stuff. But I was a TV personality in Canada in the 2000s. I did a show called Ed and Red's Night Party. You may have seen it on G4. So I'm in the industry. I'm a woman in entertainment. I've got that. Then I went to games journalism because my first love is video games. I was front and center in Gamergate. So I understand online, not going to swear, bleep piles, right? Yorkie piles.
Don't worry, I will use SpongeBob whale sign. Whatever.
But so then I was a peer counselor in high school, and my Twitch chat was turning into group therapy sessions. And it's like, all right, if people just want somebody to talk to for really low cost, I'll do that. I'll set it up. And it's this combination of, yes, people talking about things they just need someone to talk to, for people who just want somebody to talk to once a week because they're isolated because their jobs. But there's a lot of artist management, career stuff. I deal with people who are management track. And so the discussions there, it was this sheepish thing, right? Like, I see myself in Johnny Depp. And these were not people that I expected at all. Now, I had been following it before because another thing I do is it's called social engineering for a consult on online culture and cybersecurity stuff. And so the whole, that angle that got into the online stuff, because there's two buckets here, right? There's the trial itself and the personalities involved. And then there's the online phenomenon. And much like Retake Mass Effect, much like Gamergate, much like some of it's hard to follow them now. There's just something that's lightning in a bottle about all this stuff. And it's really easy to say, oh, this is another Gamergate, but it's not. The contours of the Depp Heard thing are different. They hit some of the same pain points, but it almost became a Gamergate-like phenomenon with the after effects, with the celebritization of some of the reporters on the case, with attacking the fandom so to speak, accusations of ill intent or inauthentic activity, and people going, wait, hold up. I know I'm a real person. I know I'm coming at this straight. You don't have to agree with me, but don't say I'm fake or some sort of bad actor. Similarities are definitely there. The contours of everything else are kind of different, and I don't know where to begin on which part of sort of my background, because I was a documentarian as well on youth music things. I did an award-nominated documentary on a hip-hop called What's Wrong with Hip-Hop. We went into some sort of the cultural factors. I've done things on feminism in gaming and media. So I sound like the last person in the world to see the whole Depp Heard thing and go, there's a problem with her story. On paper, I'm a textbook believe women. We called it What's Wrong with Hip Hop to say nothing's wrong with hip hop. And we showed how the double standard in the media regarding when a white hair metal band depicts women in a certain way, oh, that's just fine. When Black artists go, well, we're going to do that, but we're going to put in the women we think are hot. Oh, now it's misogynist and all that. So, but the process of interviewing the different people, everyone, I knew it was coming. Every time I showed up, they ripped me for the poor treatment the network treated Black artists. They were always, you're quite happy to contact me when you want me to talk about being Black. But when you play my music, when it's time to play my music, some reason you're not around. And that formed a lot of my opinions about the role in media when it is these social issues. You can't go into it going, I have been mistreated. All these horrible people are attacking me. Yes, because you're the one they can yell at. See, and that's part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people do miss that side of celebrity culture where, unfortunately, because of parasocial relationships, not just that, but people love to hate on somebody and you're just the easy target. It's not right, but there is a psychology behind it that we would just never understand. It's like trying to understand a psychopath. We just can't. I mean, sorry to use that word, but
it's true though, because that's why I gave Amber Heard a really easy ride early on.
Same. Absolutely the same.
She's an actress. I know what it's like to be treated with all the stereotypes and, people assuming the worst. You're a gold digger, you're this, you're that, yada, yada, yada. I remember the exact moment where I had my first red flag regarding the story.
When was that moment?
It was back when she originally filed the restraining order against her. I actually did a YouTube video at the time because I wanted to plant a flag.
You you were actually following this from 2016?
Yes, sir.
Insane. Walk me through this. Why was that is very interesting because you didn't know the evidence. You didn't see the evidence at all. And you basically was like, nope, something is wrong here. And it was the restraining order, 27th of March. What was that something is wrong here? What was the light bulb moment?
Well, there was two things. One, there were issues with the story, and obviously this was through the media, so it's not first hand. You have to take this with a grain of salt.
Secondary source.
That was the first time the story about the altercation with her sister on the stairs came out. It was then.
Oh, the deposition. Yeah.
And it was I knew he was going to hit my sister. Now that wording, when you're a professional listener, that is something you do have to elaborate on, because think about it. I knew he was going to. It means he hadn't done anything yet. How did you know he was going to?
Interesting.
What gave you that perspective?
I will throw back here. Maybe he's done it before. I did that, maybe he's done it before.
Right. Yeah. Valid. And that's the thing about what's called deception detection or truth seeking. You have to turn your assumptions off instead of jumping to, oh, well, she's obviously lying, or, oh, he obviously did it before. Okay, how did you know? Because the truth is you don't know, you suspect. And an honest person will go, well, this is exactly like what happened before. You're right. I didn't know. Or something, his body language, his fists, balled up. He was charging towards her.
Yeah.
Something that was missing in that account. It was just, I knew he was going to hit my sister. So wham, right? There she is admitting she hit him first, but she'd created what we call a permission structure to justify the violence. Oh, I was defending my sister from an attack that hadn't happened yet. Again, preemptive attack. Yeah. No saying that's, no saying there's nefarious intent there. We can't say she's got a personality disorder or divorced from reality or she's an abuser or anything from that. But that was the first question. And I wanted to stick a pin in that because the other thing is you've got a very high profile man who has a history of being something of a bad boy. We know he trashes things. We know he destroys hotel rooms. We know he gets tattoos that he has to then correct because Winona Forever became Wino Forever, right? We know he has a history of impulsive behavior, but there has been no history of abusing women before this. A man in his 50s does not suddenly become abusive unless there's a change, traumatic brain injury, something that radically changes his personality and impulse.
Car crash or going to war. Those two things are the first things that are coming to my mind because
some sort of overdose that fries the brain, which is possible, of course, but everything we knew about Johnny Depp was he was a functioning addict. He didn't binge, especially not when he was working. And so that whole story about the Pirates of the Caribbean thing, we've got somebody here who has had an apparent radical personality change. Now, when we do that, especially when we're dealing with addiction, we have to remember addiction's a disease, not a character fault. And then all the stories started coming out about the wild parties in his penthouse, the Elon Musk stuff. All this stuff came out before the trial, right? Big red flag. You've got somebody who's been an addict their entire life. Why are you bringing booze and drugs into his space?
When did you learn that information?
There was a story that came out after he accused her. I believe it was in Rolling Stone, but I could be wrong. This is the second point, so thank you for reminding me of it. A friend of his wrote a clapback article saying, and it could have been after the Aquaman one, but it could have been after the TRO, saying
it was after the TRO.
Okay,
it was after the TRO.
It was. So because I made a video on this. He wasn't abusing her. She was abusing him. We all saw it. We tried to get him away, and that you don't see that. I mean, compare that to the Marilyn Manson thing, right? Where the minute that came out, everybody ran for cover. Trent Reznor was saying no, like other musicians who worked with them went, yeah, this doesn't surprise us. That's what you normally see when someone's got a history of bad behavior. Doesn't mean guaranteed slam dunk, but that's what you expect to see.
There's a pattern, basically.
There are certain, and there are exceptions to every rule, and we can talk about some of those, but that's what you expect to see from a big picture social observation part. The fact that somebody put their own reputation on the line to go, no, this is wrong, that's really powerful.
And for
men do not, unless they're all narcissistic sociopaths, men do not defend men when they hit a woman.
I was literally about to say his name was Doug Stanhope, and
that's right.
Like he doesn't strike me as the type to even come out and just be like, "Hey, I know OJ. He didn't do that." You know what I mean?
Not for OJ, right? Nobody, even Michael B. Jordan isn't defending Jonathan Majors publicly,
you know what I mean?
Right? Because everybody goes, all right, I don't know for sure, right? I don't want to defend somebody who possibly has bad behavior. Yes, he does get drunk. Yes, he does do drugs. Yes, he hasn't been doing well. I don't know. I wasn't there. For someone to go absolutely not, that matters. Not because I want to believe Johnny Depp, because that just doesn't happen.
Well, to provide a bit of context that might, make, I'm not going to say put you at ease a little, but to show that you are not really talking with bias here, is that Amber Heard actually tried to sue him for defamation, saying that he was lying and saying it was a hoax, akin to Sandy Hook, something like that. So, but she withdrew. So, in my opinion, I'm thinking, why, like, in my opinion, she's very litigious, because it wasn't just the first time that she sued him for the GQ interviews, where again, she sued Depp in this case for the GQ interview.
In fact, on October 11th, 2018, you actually commenced an arbitration action against Mr. Depp for defamation, didn't you?
I don't recall that, no.
And that's 6 months before Mr. Depp filed this case against you, correct?
That's correct.
So you fired the first shot, not Mr. Depp.
I disagree. We sent a letter.
It strikes me as odd that she was doing those things, but yet when the VA trial was coming, she was doing everything she can to get it dismissed. And I'm like, well, why would you be sending arbitration letters and all those things if you're not really interested in going to court? That doesn't make any sense. But
well, that also, they warn you, somebody who worked in the media in a sexualized job, they warn you the minute you start suing, you have to be prepared to never work again, because people don't like to work with people who sue, especially women. You are warned off doing that. And that's not to say if people feel like they have been defamed, they should defend their rights. Because it's one thing to be wrong. It's another thing to be putting opinion over fact. Because I think people should be allowed to have their opinions. I think that when opinions are seen as bad or wrong, the people that get the most damage from that are the marginalized. And I do think that people need to be able to say unpopular things.
Yeah.
But facts have to matter.
I'm glad you brought that context, because the narrative now is no one actually believed her back in 2016. And isn't that convenient when obviously time has passed and no one is actually going to look back into Google and going to Google searches to find out, who actually believed Amber Heard? No one's going to do that. So they're just going to, like...
It's absolutely not true. Public sympathy was on her side.
Yep. I do want to expand a little bit on on what you said in regards to women not being advised to not sue, because that is something that I actually never actually knew about, or I'm pretty sure most people don't know about. Why is that actually not just women, but of course men as well? But why is it in the industry that you're advised against suing?
Well, because no one likes to be sued. It's bad for business. And yes, this is a bit of sexism in the industry, because people sue each other all the time. I mean, Lord of the Rings was infamous that Peter Jackson was suing New Line and like their people were golfing together. It's just business. But there is a particular thing against women in the media. It's the, you know what you signed up for. You get one of the most infamous, I don't even know if I can say this quote, during Gamergate was somebody said, you get your tits out for a living. I'm a real journalist. Don't tell me how to do my job. I won't tell you how to do yours. That is the attitude towards women in the industry. And when you sue, you're considered trouble. And so you only sue when you think your career is over.
That could explain why she withdrew then. Well, from the docs.
Well, you don't even launch the case.
Oh, okay.
Quite frankly, it is a big swing to sue someone, because the bar, especially in the US, is so high with defamation for public figures. Right? If somebody thinks I'm, say, a slut, I have to prove that hurt my career. How does that hurt my career when I'm posing in chainmail bikinis for a living? Yes, I did that once. feel free to Google it. They actually swiped my photos when they announced the Robert Rodriguez Red Sonja movie and used them without my permission. And I couldn't do anything about that either. You have to prove that the claims damaged you. And let's face it, in a messy divorce like that, that's what everybody says. And we see, there was the big deal about that Dana White slapped his wife on camera, head of the UFC, right? The reason I bring up things like the Fatty Arbuckle thing in the 30s is it's all about, does the behavior violate your brand? And that's why Johnny Depp's actions were also ding, ding. Okay, something's interesting here. That he sued even though he hadn't lost much work at first, right? The accusations were out there. He was still continuing to work. It wasn't until that Washington Post thing and J.K. Rowling's reputation as being a feminist became, Dan Wooten attacking her. How do you have a wife beater on? You claim to be this. That was a knock at her. And ironically, based on how she is now, she defended him at the time. Now, again, this is a woman who thinks men are dangerous and evil. We've seen that. And she stood by him. Now, that could just her being a hypocrite, but it's another data point.
I think this is one of those ones where, if I could offer an opinion on J.K. Rowling, because I actually haven't, based on what
you sure you want to rip this Band-Aid off, man?
Let me rip it off.
This is dangerous waters.
I'm going to get killed one day or the other, so I might as well die now. Looking at how she stands for women, etc., that's pretty consistent. And of course, in terms of what you're bringing out, in terms of her being etc., obviously she didn't have these views back then. But looking at, I can't see it as hypocritical. The reason why I can't see it as hypocritical is, well, for one, the relationship between both of them seems to be pretty strong for him even getting a role in the first place. But not just that, it's also the relationship with Ellen Bonham Carter as well. Those play a part. And I don't think those two women would be like, in their head, think he may have done it and still, no, it's just not gonna happen. I just don't see it. Like they look like they would, do some weird stuff, but I don't think they would go that far to vindicate somebody that they really, really had evidence to say, yeah, he actually did this. And
again,
that's what I think anyway.
Again, most people just try to stay out of it if they don't have proof, because we all know what the narrative is on this stuff, right? We all know what the right thing to say is. And most people just want to go about their lives and not get any on them.
It's stressful. It's stressful.
Well, do I like being called a traitor to my sex? Do I like being called all the things I've been called over this thing? No. But my job is not, in the case of reporting and being an analyst and a commentator on YouTube and all that stuff, and somebody who does provide mental health services and community support services, we can't ignore facts. And they used the UK ruling, which I read. And what I read in that ruling is he's an addict, he must have done it. Which, oh God, like
no,
that.
You are not the first person. You are not the first person to react like that, because when I spoke to someone I spoke to someone that's very close to me who works in drugs and alcohol for like the best period of 15 years. And that stigma is really hurtful for anyone that has actually seen these people on a day-to-day basis. So let's go into that for a minute, because that stigma is what's been going on. And linking back to the pin that you were talking about earlier,
Yeah,
because I feel like
that
those two
was
have a relationship.
that was one of the things that really disturbed me. I mean, one, I feel because we had the Jiango Meshi case going on up here. I don't know if you've heard about this. It was going on at a similar period of time. I took the same position on that as I did on these cases, that no matter what the outcome, it doesn't mean that what happened to you, speaking to all of you out there, isn't real, that it didn't happen. You know what happened. You know the facts. This is a different thing. It has no bearing on you and what you know happened. And in that case, he was acquitted of, I believe it was sexual assault. I don't remember. There were a whole bunch of accusers there. But the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, the mistake that they made in the UK was that they went after the publication, and she was just a witness, not the defendant.
Yeah.
And it was, when that happens, it's a question of, did the newspaper do due diligence? Could they reasonably believe? She did say that. They reported factually what her claims against her was. Dan Wooten saying he's a wife beater, well, that's opinion, and that's fair game. The difference between that case and the one in Virginia was judge trial versus jury trial, but also Amber Heard was a direct defendant. So you can call witnesses to impeach her. You can talk about whether she was lying. That's not relevant if you're only suing the newspaper. But that's not how the judge ruled. The judge ruled assuming he blacked out and just doesn't remember what he did. And that is drugs and alcohol stigma. And I know there are a lot of conspiracy theories about the judge in that case. And I think you can say, I disagree with the reasoning here. Now, it's the Westminster, it's British common law system. It works differently than the American system. That's another thing. And that, Judge Penny was like, no, we're not going to let a UK court decide an American trial.
That was always going to be a hurdle anyway. Like, it was never going to happen. It was never going to happen.
But that stigma, that's, oh, you're an addict, so you're not reliable, is why addicts are much more likely to be the victims of crimes than the perpetrators, even though, yes, there is strong correlation between especially alcohol abuse and violence. That's accurate, that there is a lot of booze in domestic abuse. There is. That's true. It is also true that especially functional addicts, I hate that term, but they are people with mental health conditions, and addiction as a mental health condition are much more likely to be the victim of crimes, including assault, than the perpetrators. Both facts are true. We don't have to pick between them. What happened in the UK was the judge picked, you're a drunk.
Yeah, he pretty much said it in every incident that was alleged. And to be fair to the judge, it is what Amber was. It was Amber's entire case, if I'm being, well, not Amber, but the son's entire case, because Amber was providing this information to them. Like, from
I think it was the right ruling for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
The reason people often don't seek treatment for their addiction is, as long as they're in denial about being an addict, this stigma doesn't kick in. The minute you go, I have a problem, then suddenly you're labeled and people can say, oh, you're a drunk, oh, you're this. And that's abusive language. We cannot both go, addiction is a mental health condition, it's self-medicating, it's masking other mental health conditions. We cannot both say that and go, well, this is a moral failing, you must be guilty of all these other things because you have a problem with drugs and alcohol. From a mental health stigma perspective, what's been going on numerous fronts with this trial is really damaging. On my podcast and radio show, It's Not Therapy, I just did a show about borderline personality disorder. Part of it is what came up in the Depp Heard trial with the BPD, the NPD, the they sound like police departments in a comic book. They're not. They're personality disorders. And again, yes, there is a particular profile specifically of women with particular conditions. It is also true that statistically they are more likely to be the victims of crime than perpetrators.
So it's almost the same as the alcohol issue, like that the people with BPD, like so the main message should be that, you know, you shouldn't really stigmatize these disorders as well as, you know, these addictions.
They're a factor, right?
Yeah.
She probably has something. You can't diagnose somebody from a series of meetings. We can talk about that element of the trial and why I think the jury actually made the right decision for the right reasons in the Virginia trial. But you can say that's a factor. You can use those things to explain the manifestation of why she abused in particular ways and why she could absolutely believe what she's saying and yet still be not factual. Like the thing with the stairs and her sister. But it is not why someone abuses. I know people with borderline personality disorder, they've gotten treatment, they're well aware of their condition and they take steps accordingly. And then there are people who refuse to admit they have a problem. They just let it run wild and you get bad outcomes. So it's really important and it became so personality politics in the trial, we couldn't have that discussion. And I was really, really disappointed by people I know better in the media missing the mental health stigma component while doing this war over the various psychological profiles.
Well, that was the main reason why that was what drove me to do this documentary. If I'm being completely honest with you, I've spoken to a lot more therapists and clinical psychologists that I actually banked or thought I would actually get a chance to sit down with for someone that is not really known at all. But but I do want to add a bit of context to the men, because you didn't know what disorder she may have, and you are right to actually say in terms of just a few sessions sitting with someone, you cannot actually diagnose in that situation. You can be the best psychologist there is, but I actually completely agree with you here. It is not possible, because a lot of these personality disorders, they do require an extensive background check, extensive therapy sessions to even establish a baseline. So I wanted to I have looked over the notes of the people that has worked with her, that has, you know, sat with her in therapy for more than 2 years, etc. And it was reported in, I believe it was Debbie Lloyd's, no, Erin Falati's notes, who was her nurse. Sorry. Let me just add 30 more minutes on. Sorry.
No problem.
Okay. I believe it was Erin Falati who was her personal nurse, and she noted down that she suffered from bipolar. Now, to me, I think that was actually a lot more accurate than...
There are markers, and this is what the difference between BPD and some of the other cluster B conditions is that BPD is unstable. A person who has a narcissistic personality disorder is always a narcissist. A person with histrionic personality disorder always has this unhealthy need to be the center of attention. Somebody with borderline personality can mask, it comes out with the people who are closest to them. And that feeling that things are so real is like, this is a person who is legitimately hurting. They're doing horrible things, but they're legitimately hurting. If Amber Heard does have that condition, it's okay to feel some sympathy for her while still saying her behavior in a lot of instances is unacceptable. The big difference between bipolar, because BPD is often diagnosed as bipolar first, right? Especially bipolar 1, bipolar 2. But that the thing that reads as a symptom or a trait of borderline is her inability to move on from the relationship. Because she was out. She was out. She was free and clear with him. She got her, what, $7 million?
He never contacted her.
In the divorce settlement.
He never contacted her at all.
And she couldn't not write the piece. victims do not like to wave a red flag in front of their abuser's face, especially when they are much more powerful in the industry than they are. Again, you do that standard profile. You do that not when you've had the biggest role of your career. You do that when you've got nothing left to lose.
Wow. You're going to get called a victim blamer now. You're going to get called a victim.
Well, and here's the thing, right? That's why I say if she does have BPD, game changer.
Yeah.
Right? Because she's not trying, well, she might be trying to hurt him, but she is in such intense pain, such intense distress that we should have, and this is all speculative, right? And I'm not saying she shouldn't do it. And I appreciate your ability to clarify. I'm just saying people don't. They don't when they have something to lose because he's gone. He can't hurt me anymore. I have this opportunity now. Because people, well, people go, maybe I misremembered it. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought. The self-blame that I've been through it. I was diagnosed with PTSD in 2013. I was stalked by another woman. So that's not what was led to the diagnosis because I couldn't take it anymore. See, PTSD goes back to childhood. Yeah. And that's the other thing. That's what Amber Heard is claiming. See. Right? That doesn't happen from a relatively brief period of something in adulthood. That goes all the way back. Complex trauma is real. And you see that. It's really hard to get, is it CPTSD? Is it borderline? A lot of women with CPTSD get diagnosed as borderline because doctors don't see the trauma markers. Now, let's be honest about psychiatric diagnoses. There's no blood test. There's no X-ray. There's no MRI for this stuff. What they're talking about is a collection of symptoms that leads to a treatment protocol. And that's why I give the jury in the Depp Heard case mad credit for ignoring everything but the direct statements. I give, like, good for the jury. They were not distracted.
Listen, when I say this, I get jumped on because exactly as you have put it, I actually believe that I do believe that they had the right in such a really difficult case if you were to listen to any of the experts and for one of them to come out and say, no, we actually disregarded all of them. That showed you that the people of Virginia actually not only took this case seriously, but they were really competent to actually see that the mental health aspect of this case was the actual thing that's gonna mock, not the cameras, not anything, not social media, but it was just that fact alone. Credit to Dr. Curry, credit to, well, I'm not sure how much credit you want to give to Dr. Hughes, but credit to both of them. They did their best, but the one person that I just felt that threw everything to the fan, threw literal poo to the fan, is Dr. Spiegel. Let's talk about him for a second. Let's talk about Dr. Hines.
Somebody based on his acting roles.
Let's talk about the real Dr. Hines Doofenshmirtz for a second. Let's talk about the real Dr.
That's where the name comes from? Okay.
That's where the name came from. No, this guy instantly reminded me of the minute he sat down. I was like, that's Doofenshmirtz.
That was an interesting bit of testimony. I mean, I will say about the other two, you're right. The other two doctors, they got jumped on a lot, especially Dr. Curry. But she went up there. The way it was reported in the media and the way you saw it in the trial was different because she never said anything definitive. She goes, this is what I saw based on not just my interviews with her, but the notes that I was provided with, the other information. And it was sort of, if I had to, I would say this. Obviously, that's not my job here.
In my opinion, she was probably the most professional, and they kept using the muffins against her. Should a case like this had it's not a criminal case, by the way. So in my opinion, I actually didn't see the need. Though I understand the ruling, don't get me wrong. If you're going to claim PTSD from an article that's being written about you, be prepared to be psychologically evaluated, because that is the legal standard.
And that's the other point, right? She is claiming she has this condition because of him. That's an automatic assessment.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, we can argue whether that's for civil standard, etc. But we know, well, for anyone that does have a bit of background in law, it comes in because of insurance cases. You know, when they claim all of these things. So that's the reason why it's even there. But for it to, me personally, I would have wished that it could be limited just for those cases and not cases like this, because it really muddied the waters a lot. What do you think? How much impact do you think that actually had on the overall education, on the reflection of society that we live in today? And I'm asking this for you to factor in lay people's opinions in regards to the mental health aspect, as well as the media. And I know we've been through it a little bit, but try not to repeat yourself if possible.
Yeah, no, if I can pivot on the question a little bit,
yeah,
I'm going to drop a really spicy take.
Okay, go on. I love spicy takes. I love paprika.
I'm putting on my feminist hat. This is hot, spicy, like Hungarian paprika right here. You know? The biggest collective trauma that I think is going to last is a bunch of women who claim to be feminists protecting Amber Heard, character assassinating Camille Vasquez, Dr. Curry, and a whole bunch of other women who, the woman who interviewed Amber Heard for 2020, it is this going after like a half dozen women to defend one. How is this believing women? Why is one woman believed and not all these other women? Why is Camille Vasquez evil and protecting an abuser as opposed to a really good lawyer doing her job? Why is Steph Curry, is that her name? No, that's a basketball player. That's a sorry. That's a basketball player.
Now that was a hot take. That was a hot take.
Yes,
you
Steph Curry is definitely a lawyer.
You misgendered.
You can tell I'm a Raptors fan, man. Like, why did I do that? What was her name? Dr. Curry.
Shannon Curry. Dr. Shannon Curry.
It was an S. Come on, it's Raptor. I live in Raptors.
This is going to get clipped, folks. This is gonna get clipped.
Like I said, going back to my roots. But okay, so Dr. Curry, she did her job. Camille Vasquez did her job. The interviewer in 2020 did her job. All these other women down the line, the women on the jury, even the Amber Heard's lawyer, that poor woman.
Elaine.
The savagery turned on these women in the guise of believing and elevating and protecting and whatever women. I gotta call BS on that, because when you're sacrificing all these women who are just doing their jobs, they could be wrong. Johnny Depp could be this horrible person and he snowed everybody, but they're just doing their jobs. Everybody deserves a defense. Everybody deserves a fair analysis. Everybody deserves that stuff. And to go after these women for just doing their jobs and maybe getting it wrong, that's worse for the mental health of people watching it, for one, but also the believability of women and what's called a morality bias going forward. That is so damaging to any woman trying to do something significant in the public eye. They did so much damage with the even if she lied narrative. Because what's that feeding into, right? And I really like Michelle Goldberg. I really like some of the people who did the even if she lied thing, but I'm like, I gotta stop you, because what's that saying? We know women lie. It's okay. Poor wee lambs. No. I don't want to live in that world. It embeds, yeah, women lie. Come on. We all know women lie. We all know they get their little feelings hurt and go after guys. And we know it all didn't really happen, but oh, poor thing. So upset. That needs to stop, because that flails back on people like Nicola Sturgeon, like Kamala Harris, like Chrystia Freeland up here. It's women can't take it. Women are not equal to men. We can't hold them accountable. We can't rely on them to do stuff when it's hard. No, that's not feminism. That is, I don't know what that is. That's going back to, if you read the Seneca Falls Convention, it was a bunch of Quaker ladies who did this during first wave feminism. And they were like, we want all these things. And the thing most people remember is the right to vote. And the Quaker men were like, well, that's crazy. We don't even vote. We don't recognize the US government. We believe in God, and that's it. But one of the things they said they wanted, and I believe the British suffragettes did too, but I could be mixing it up. One of the demands was that women be treated equally under the law to their husbands, because at the time, women who committed crimes with their husbands were seen as less morally culpable than the men were. And they're like, that's not right. They saw the problem back then. And here we are in, when the heck was it? The trial was a year ago?
Yeah, 2022.
Columnists for the New York Times who've taken on guys like Jordan Peterson in debates are saying, even if she lied. No, if she lied, she lied. That matters. What's going on here? Absolutely. That's just a line that we cannot cross. If she lied, she lied. Period. If he lied, he lied. If somebody else lied, they lied. Lying is lying. It doesn't matter who does it. And we can get into the sociology, the pressures. There are different kinds of lies. And I don't know if you want to talk about that, because he lied. We know he lied about what originally happened to his finger. He admits he lied. It's a different lie.
Yeah. Lying to protect is not the same lying to cover your snakes.
Also, when you're lying to cover up a thing with a film production because you're embarrassed, it's not the same as taking the stand, being sworn in, swearing to your country and God that you are going to tell the truth, and then BSing. Ironically, is a big way false accusations, non-malicious false accusations happen. Somebody comes up with something because they're embarrassed about something. The person they told goes, you have to go to the police. This, big, and they get caught up.
Yeah.
And that's why it's really important that we don't require people go to the authorities. They get to handle it the way they want to. Nobody should ever be pressured that way.
This is where I think we would disagree a little bit, because I do think I hate calling myself a victim before, but it is something that I really do wish that I did do, which was immediately get it on record at least, and then wait to see if it happens again, because
I did that and it went really badly. And also, look at Jonathan Majors. If he's telling the truth, he did that and it slapped him hard.
Yeah.
Cops are not necessarily great with this stuff, especially when it's men.
I was literally about to say, remember that, I think, I forgot her name. Was it Bianca or something? It was last year. The husband cheated on her. She slapped him. I forgot her name, but he called the police immediately, and they came and arrested her. Like that was kind of the scenario. Kind of like I wish I did something like that, but I never mind.
Okay, but then look at Chris Rock, right? Everybody knows what happened there. It happened on an international broadcast. He didn't want to take it further. He didn't want to press charges. For him to get on with his life, he should be able to say, no, I want this to stop here. I'm okay with it.
I understand.
People, when someone is victimized, and if you feel like you should have gone to the police, that's totally valid, right? That is true.
I get where you're coming from now.
Yeah.
I actually do get where you're coming from now. In terms of if somebody was there at the time, because at the time I still made a decision not to do it. But if someone was there at the time saying, no, you do it, that would be wrong, because I'm not gonna stand by that decision. I might even regret that decision, like I'm regretting it now. You know, I'm like, well, not really regret.
That's where a post-traumatic response comes from, right?
Yeah.
You're still stuck back there,
Yeah.
trying to get a win in an unwinnable situation. And that's why, I mean, when this stuff plays out in the press, it's very important to tell people what happened to you. But unless you're prepared to suffer the court of public opinion, and again, I know this, having gone through it, Gamergate, you have to, that is part of it. And you can't then say, well, you can, but it's not very persuasive that, oh, I'm now being harassed. In Amber Heard's case, these are people who sincerely believe the Depp side of the story, and they are angry. They are outraged. Of course, some people are going to say rotten stuff. And I say this as somebody who is like, don't call her a C, don't call her a see you next Tuesday. Don't attack her on things. Just, she lied. That's all. Don't make fun of her looks. Don't make misogynist slurs. Just stay in your lane. And I took a lot of crap for that. But again, I did that because I do understand why people were so very upset at her. And I thought that the media, the after the fact media narrative of Johnny Depp supporters are harassers of women was so wrong and so damaging. And I have had professional setbacks because people assumed in male-dominated fields that I was not as tough as my male colleagues. And so I take that extremely personally because I see what happens to women when the expectation is we're treated differently than, her supporters who believe him, who believe her, who think he's a horrible abuser, who go after his erectile dysfunction. Like that, you just don't do that. You don't. And it's got to be the same rules for everybody, or we don't have equality. And as long as there are different rules, the people who come up short are the marginalized groups. And that's why I hold the Amber Heard side more to account than the Johnny Depp side, because they're the ones claiming that they support the advancement of women. Credibility matters. 3, it is essentially important that we do not undermine the concept of a jury trial, because even though it's not perfect, it is the best we got, because otherwise we're dealing with judges who come from fairly elite backgrounds. We have a diversity problem, and it is luck of the draw that you get a judge that understands what's going on. You're dealing with the biases of one person or a panel of 3 people, as opposed to the biases of 7 to 12 people who have to fight it out and come to a consensus. If I have to pick between those two systems, I'm going to go to the one with more checks and balances. Yeah. And those are the 3 main issues to me that the Depp trial and the coverage of the Depp trial blew.
I've done an interview on my channel with Justin Hunt, and we talked about them. We talked about the systemic sexism that Meg Thee Stallion faced.
And I was full on Team Meg there.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, same. I mean, I waited till after the trial, like I always do, but the evidence was pretty much overwhelming. But the main thing that we spoke about again was the sexism that was going on, that was prevalent. And the one thing I started noticing was the Oppression Olympics going on, where Amber Heard was being compared to, and I could not believe this. My head nearly exploded, because covering the case was actually very emotional for me, because what I saw, and this is, we didn't talk about this actually on the interview, but we did talk about it off camera. And what he was saying was, you can't be playing Oppression Olympics like this. Like, and I basically said to him, yeah, like we saw Meg go to hospital, and even with overwhelming evidence, she still lied. and I'm like, who does that remind you of? Like, it's absolutely bad-ish insane for you to then go around and turn around and say Amber Heard is like Meg, suffering the same way that Meg did.
That was so offensive. It was just so offensive to compare the cases. There's no doubt Megan Thee Stallion was shot. She went to the hospital. She had to be treated. Oh, it was just the foot. So what? She was shot. She was shot. We at least have that fact. We know someone shot her, and she didn't shoot herself.
Like,
come on.
It showed me how much the world is desensitized to violence. Picture the fact that if the bullet was to ricochet and hit her belly, what would have happened? Like, honestly, like, it could have gone.
Okay, but let's face it. Then we get into the black on black crime stereotype, and people go, "Oh, well, no, it." And this is where I get into patently disagree that Amber Heard was an imperfect victim.
No, yeah.
Amber Heard was a perfect victim in terms of media narrative. She's white. She's pretty.
She's blonde.
You know, she's blonde. She's weepy. They have the picture of, oh, poor me taking a picture. Whereas if I can only imagine what Meg was going on, like, get away from me in the hospital.
She
right?
was hiding. She didn't even want to
she,
release the pictures. That's what pissed me off the most, because she did not.
And then they go after Rihanna. They went after Rihanna for putting him in a Fenty show, and I'm like, are you seeing the pattern here, people? And I mean, Rihanna's a shining example of why I say people have to be able to handle their own assault. We all know what Chris Brown did to her, but at least where I come from, if she wants to be, nope, I want to just move on. Give her that power. Give her her power back. Restorative justice means anything somebody like Rihanna or Megan Thee Stallion or who else, anything they need to do to feel like they are safe and they are in control of their lives and that the world makes sense and they can say, stop. That's justice. Trials, going to jail, op-eds, whatever. That is not justice. That is retribution. That is punishment. And if Rihanna wants to do a collab with Chris Brown, if that's what she needs to do to heal, we shouldn't judge her for that. Megan Thee Stallion needs to write a piece in, what was it, like Vogue or something like that? And she's like, this is it. I'm not talking about this anymore. Respect that. This idea of how anybody should behave when they have their physical bodily autonomy violated in a violent way is not for us to say. That is the height of, I could drop a lot of, SJW terms right now. I'm going to refrain and just say that doesn't understand the end goal. Is the end goal to punish the guilty so we can all feel like good people while we did absolutely nothing? Or is the goal to allow healing? And I do think we need a lot more attention on the dynamics in something like the Megan Thee Stallion case or the Rihanna case, because even though they're famous, those are much more indicative. Those are much more along the lines of what everybody knows somebody who's been through those things. The moment, the Amber Heard moment where she showed the world who she was the donate versus pledge thing. That was it. I know people like pastors were saying to me, one, the pooping in the bed thing just rocked a lot of people. But that moment where she had the opportunity to go, yeah, I fully intended to give the money. I got caught up. I ran into financial problems. You're right. I didn't pay it all. Instead of that, she tried to claim that donate meant pledge, and that a regular person in a jury or watching at home or their offices on the internet just doesn't buy that.
She actually took us for fools. She took us for fools.
She made it easy for people. Anybody who saw that clip where Camille Vasquez was giving her chance after chance after chance to take an exit rap. It was a brilliant cross. It was a really, really, really good bit of lawyering. But come on, it's okay. And she wouldn't take the exit. That was a credibility test. It was not about the details. She was not on trial for not giving money to charity. Yes. Similarly, we have the tapes with that. Another thing, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. You weren't hit, you weren't punched, you were hit. But I didn't. When you're shading whether or not you hit somebody with an open or closed fist, Johnny Depp was right. They were a horror show. And the other thing that was a big thing for me, and I know this is a bit looping back around to addict stigma, the treatment of Paul Bettany. That's not a basketball player, right? I'm getting that.
God.
Now I'm like, am I going to suddenly say Vince Carter texted Johnny Depp? The treatment of Paul Bettany.
Yeah.
Did you notice the character assassination that her team, her legal team, did on him? I thought it was such a cheap shot, calling him his drug buddy.
Yeah.
Johnny Depp was the one in court. Paul Bettany was not in court. That's an abuse tactic. When you are smearing, when you are defaming someone in public merely because he's the friend of the person you're against, that is social abuse.
We know people taking drugs excessively, drinking excessively, all those things are not great behaviors, or even behaviors that you would tell somebody to repeat afterwards. However, we give them that benefit of the doubt because we know at the same time that they're suffering. The same way with victims, right. the same way with people with disorders, all of these things, they are suffering. I understand why people feel a certain way and would really be pissed. And I also understand why people would join to do an open letter, which is something that I saw to say, hey, the harassment.
Yeah, we're going to go to the open letter.
Yeah,
okay,
this is the last one. This is the last one. Because I do want to close up now. But that open letter, I got the concept behind it. And again, this is what, like, I've contacted every one of them to say, please come on this, because I want to talk to you. I'm not going to hit piece you or anything like that. I just want to know the idea behind it and ethos behind it.
There's a difference between punishment and atonement. And when have you done your time? When can you reintegrate in society? What are the bars? And when can people stop feeling like they're being judged because they just don't care about any of it? And I do think too often people take these cases, and if you don't agree with me, you're a bad person. If you don't agree that they should be scorched off the planet. And people don't do better if they don't think they can come back in. That's why we're losing so many women to some of these very radical groups, so many men to the manosphere, and a lot of trans and non-binary youth to self-harm and suicide. The ostracization is just permanent.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And this is why I wanted to highlight the No Clark case, because there was one positive that came out of that, which was the open letter to address the harassment and the way that the industry is shaped around the contracts, that they get all those things so that people don't feel like they can't report bad behavior.
That thing I was talking about suing. That's right. Yeah.
So for me, who has been in the industry, I have seen female DJs literally have the toughest time going through as a female DJ. If she's not hot, believe me, you're done. You're done. Such a case that you have to frame somebody as a Weinstein to enact these changes. You can't do that. It's really bad.
I'd much rather, as somebody who's been through it, and not only was subjected to sexual harassment, actually had to deal with a legitimate sexual harassment issue on a production I was a producer on. And oh man, acting on that was unpopular. A lot of men on that crew didn't like how I handled it because they were women in sexualized roles, and they thought, oh, what did they expect? Well, they were expected to be treated with professionalism as at work.
Yeah.
You know, it is hard. And I do think that we need to be encouraging people to discuss, and it should not have to be a violent act for somebody to say that really hurt me, that really damaged me, that really made me feel like I was a piece of meat. And that's everybody. I think men should be able to say that too. You know, Kit Harington got dumped all over for saying he felt objectified by during Game of Thrones. Like, oh, what do you think women take? It doesn't matter. Now he kind of understands it, right?
And the worst one. Well, it must have been good for you because you're getting female attention. Like, no.
And
no.
Trust me, it's not. It's not. And I think the reason that Johnny Depp won people over is because he did Cersei Lannister's walk of shame in that trial. He just sat there and took it and took it. He knew his medical history was going to come out. He knew the fact that he lied was going to come out. He knew that his drug use was going to come out. He knew those photos of him passed out. He knew it was going to be humiliating. And he did the walk of shame anyway. And I think a lot of people, because it's all about empathy.
Yeah.
Right? People could relate to the story he presented of somebody who was down, who had a difficult childhood, who had issues with his mom, all that stuff. They couldn't relate to Amber Heard's performance. And again, not diagnosing, the only time I have seen that switch in somebody before was with histrionic personality disorder. It was almost like she had a hit of amphetamine because she knew all eyes were on her. And that's not saying she does have that condition. I'm just saying that's what it looked like to me. There was something, the unnatural eye contact, because she was doing that immediate besties thing with the jury, and it backfired. And someone being annoying or someone being, we'll say, neuroatypical should not determine their innocence or guilt. But the reality is that it does. And I did think that we have a lot of work to do in terms of the feminist movement, in terms of getting people on side. This doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Even if she lied messaging, I can't walk up to you and persuade you. Even if she lied, he deserves to be punished for it, right? Like, no, you're not going to buy that. The average person isn't going to buy that. A lot of women don't buy that because only 18% of women identify as feminist. That's a losing argument. We have to go, all right, yeah, this case was sensational. Believe what you want about it. Here's the statistics about, here's the data. This is what we know about addiction, about intimate partner violence, about this stuff. And we do need a system where people do not require getting a conviction to be believed, because we know that the vast majority, men and women, one, don't report, don't get charges laid, don't get a conviction. It's some teeny tiny, I'm sure you've seen that graphic because it was everywhere, right? The how many convictions actually result because of domestic violence, right? Normally they just do a restraining order and say stay away from each other, which okay, fine. I don't envy cops going into that situation because they're the bad guy for everybody in those circumstances. But we need, I say this every time something comes out, the legal system is not set up for justice. That's why we call it the legal system, especially civil trials. That's just about who gets paid money. We need healing. We need community things where something like that can happen. And it's, all right, I want to see your side of this. Explain it to me. Why do you believe her? And I asked people, I asked Amber Heard supporters about this stuff. And they said, because I saw so much of my own case in her. Okay, I totally get that. I understand that in your position. I probably feel the same way. There were certain things that reminded me of experiences I went through. But then why don't you give benefit of the doubt to somebody who feels exactly that way about Johnny Depp? Well, he's an abuser.
I mean, at least you got the conversation. I get blocked. I only have conversation with probably two of them. Probably two. I think just two of them.
Oh, okay. I took out all the character assassination before I could get them to settle. But that, again, I'm used to that. That's been my living for a really long time. But the empathy, it's called the double empathy gap, right? The Depp supporters are like, I mean, no joke, Amber Turd's funny as anything. It's a good line. Whether it's mean or not, it's funny. But that, a lot of people, that's all they're going to see is her at her worst moments. A lot of people are only going to see him at his worst moments, and they get very judgmental and they get very rigid. And what happens is people are seeing, Depp supporters are seeing Heard supporters through the lens of the attacks they've suffered. You're attacking me, you're a threat. Amber Heard supporters are, because let's face it, the media has told them that Depp supporters are bad people who hate women. So they're coming at that from the exact same thing. You are a threat.
Absolutely.
Of course, those two factions on the internet are going to tear each other apart. The media whipped that up on all sides because this is exactly what happened during Gamergate. The conservatives took the side of gamers. So the left-wingers go, all right, shirts and skins. If you're with gamers, we're against them. Gamers went, we didn't ask any of you. What do you mean we're misogynists and this and that? Yeah. And then, you know, the reporters, I knew so many game journalists who had the letter of resignation written. It was sitting in their desk. They were ready to walk in because the companies were not it was the same thing. Everybody felt attacked for the exact right reasons. And very few of us were willing to go, let's talk. And when we did, we got demonized for being, you know, secretly pro this or some sort of spy for the other side. The manufactured environment of distrust was, for different reasons, in gaming, because it's online, your word means a ton, right? People have to believe you're coming at them full face. With abuse circles, men are abused, women are abused, it's the same thing. There's these very fragile environments of safety that people are coming in and arguing bad faith, and people react. They cannot help it. When you are triggered from trauma, that's very real. You can't expect to be rational. And that's why even the Amber Heard supporters, the rank and file Amber Heard supporters, I see where they're coming from. Hear me out, Depp fans, because you jump on me every time I say this. I'm going to do the Game of Thrones butt thing here. The media, clearly the mainstream media, not the right-wing fringe media. Yeah. And you can't even call Fox News fringe. So left-wing mainstream versus right-wing mainstream. See, I'm correcting myself as I go along, but they clearly picked a side. And it became irrational. Them, I do put some responsibility on, because that's a failure on many levels. It's the failure of the reporters for not having objectivity. It's the failure of editors for choosing search engine optimization over take a breath and come back with some actual evidence. Yeah. For me. And then it became this, well, we're going to put it on Dateline. And then the ratings on Dateline were terrible. So, okay, this is the wrong audience. We're going to put it on Peacock. I don't know how it did, but they were treating the internet as the whole world. They got caught up in their own pro-Amber Heard echo chamber and really misread public mood because they don't talk to enough people in a explain it to me frame outside of their bubble.
Yeah.
And everybody says, oh, we have to not do that. But it's addictive, right? It feels so safe when people agree with you. And when people are coming, this is why I focus so much on healing earlier, right? Because if Chris Brown went to jail, I believe he did get charged with something, didn't he?
I think he went to jail for a few months and then he done community service.
Yeah, like
don't quote me on that. Like I
right,
don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
What happened.
Yeah, Chris Brown goes to jail. Does that take away Rihanna's nightmares if she's having them? No, only she can say what's right for her. Amber Heard, I believe, usually with people with that profile, they were profoundly neglected in childhood. And that is extremely real. And that pain lasts her entire life. Now, as somebody who's dealt with a lot of people being in the media, even though she's very good at the ancillary stuff in media, like the hair color ads and the, not the acting itself, but everything around it, she'll do very, very well short term. It's just
you
driving.
Couldn't resist that cheap shot, could you?
What? Other than the acting?
Yeah.
Okay, no. That wasn't a slam. That wasn't her slam on the talent. I'm glad you're so amused, but let's face it, her resume is very thin. Her resume is very thin as an actor. I didn't think her and Jason Momoa had great chemistry.
No, they didn't.
In Aquaman.
No, they didn't. I've seen a lot of her movies. She's.
Okay, I haven't.
Let's go.
I saw Rum Diaries because I like Hunter S. Thompson. It was okay. But I mean, let's face it, she's a gorgeous woman. And so those hair color ads, the perfume ads, all that stuff she's done, make money, girl. But that is just driving those unhealed wounds deeper. I do think the best thing for her is to get some space, get off that treadmill, have people leave her alone. And this is where the really toxic family environment that we saw in those texts comes into play, right? Because let's face it, her parents were telling her one thing and Johnny Depp something else. Her sister and her couldn't get their story straight. Did you notice that one of them said he came at her from the front, the other said he came at her from the back? Like they've had all this time and they couldn't get it straight.
No matter what happens, every lie will always expose itself. It just seems like a law of nature at this point.
But what is going on in that family that people aren't going, Amber, I love you. I can't do this. This will not go the way you think. Every guy I work with, they do. I've been the Paul Bettany in the Burn the Witch conversation when the guy tries to get his testicles back and it comes out that way. That anger that I was violated comes out. And I actually say in writing, because somebody I used to know got bit the exact way they tried to do with Johnny Depp. You don't mean this. You have never been violent. I know you're angry, but there is still the risk of legal proceedings. They can subpoena your records. And it's tough. I know I'm hurting the guy in that moment. This happens. I had an instance recently where this person who just won't let it go started bringing up a really bad scene from 2011, pulling their ex-boyfriend's chat logs, one little bit, like trying to make him look bad. And it was exactly the same. She thought she was showing he was abusive. I looked at it and goes, what does "you're just as bad as I am, you no good drunk" mean? What do you mean? Somebody who has never laid a hand on a person doesn't say you're just as bad as I am. Someone who's laid hands before and now thinks they've got the moral high ground says that. But the thing is, they don't see it. right? Because we see this in Amber Heard. I think there is a part of who literally believes, and I know I just said literally, but literally actually means literally in this case. She believes she was defending her sister in that moment. It was a cognitive distortion. She didn't know he was going to attack her. She suspected it. And so she did a preemptive strike. Understandable, but not proof of his abuse. And I think one of the things that we're really going to have to struggle with is that concept that came up of mutual abuse. Because depending on how you define abuse, it's either possible or it's not possible. And different, like sociologists don't believe in mutual abuse, right? People who are trying to reform the system are like, abuse is about power and leveraging power. It's not possible to have mutual abuse. When you're in couples counseling or you're in a restorative setting, then you need to be able to say, we hurt each other even though we loved each other.
Yep.
What are we going to do about it? And this is a problem with everything around race, gender, sexuality, gender identity, so on and so forth. Different words in different cultures, different subcultures mean different things. And abuse is an incredibly charged word. You know, in a lot of the circles I roll in, you can be abusive situationally, but not be an abuser. And I'm a bit of a black sheep because I find that language unhelpful because people don't like labels. If you've got a person who is acting out in past trauma, let's give Amber Heard the benefit of the doubt. She's not going to see why lashing out preemptively is a bad thing. She was trying to save her sister. That's good, right? Obviously, she comes from a background where laying hands on someone because of a perceived threat is okay. I came from a similar background. I was in a rough neighborhood. It happened. I did it. I know. I don't do it anymore. I'm an adult now, not a 16-year-old kid scrapping because it feels like survival. And that's the thing. We need to have a conversation where no one feels that they're at the firing squad about that behavior. And we tend to go, oh, men shouldn't hit. No, let's pivot the language to no one should. They were just bad for each other.
I agree.
He couldn't give her, she was probably looking for a daddy figure and he couldn't give her that. And he was looking for someone to make him feel alive again and she couldn't give him that. They weren't coming in as adults having a relationship with another adult. They were coming in as broken people looking for a person to save them.
Yeah.
And that's what happens there. Yep. But, you know, the courts were not the place for this. Abuse by the courts does happen.
Yeah.
There are guys who are abusive. There are women. Family court, it happens all the time. Right? Oh, you beat the kids. I want full custody. That does happen. You talk to any divorce attorney. They will tell you things that will turn you just pale. But people shouldn't let their name get, and this is somebody who has to do it. The person who's constantly saying stuff about me has no money to take. It would be very expensive, and the Depp Heard defamation case solved nothing. It got him his career back. That may have happened anyway. It made her a laughingstock. That may have happened anyway. We don't know. But if somebody really feels wronged, it should not be seen as abusive to engage in the system. We have to be very, very careful with that because sometimes the only way someone can clear their name is to bring a defamation suit. I mean, look at Sandy Hook and Alex Jones. Are we going to take away the right to sue from the Sandy Hook parents, from Alex Jones, because we don't like the way the Johnny Depp case come up? I'm not okay with that.
Oh, Liana? No. Don't you know the narrative? Sandy Hook's parents were silencing Alex Jones. Alex Jones is a true victim here. He was being silenced.
And see, you proved what I said earlier about this narrative, that ultimately the only thing the jury got it wrong thing does is allow guys like Matt Walsh and Donald Trump and Alex Jones and to go, I'm the real victim here. Even though court after court after court has said, you're full of it.
Yep.
The system's rigged. It's against me. I want to take all this language out. I want to start as somebody who helps people pick up the pieces here. None of this is helping survivors. None of it. The number of men who were profoundly re-traumatized during that trial, my heart broke. Yeah. And I don't want to make this about me. I'm reporting what I saw. My heart broke for those men.
Honestly, re-traumatized is not the word, because when I was going through this trial, I was in therapy as well, because I was recovering from a psychosis episode that I had in 2021. So I was, this was when I was finally able to see a therapist, because I was part of the NHS, healthcare, etc. So I was waiting for almost like 6 to 8 months, finally see a therapist.
Standard, yeah.
And this was happening. So the therapy session became about this, because I was like, yo, I'm seeing flashes of my relationship from all of this. Like, and I mean, she done a wonderful job, because there were so many techniques she taught me in such a short space of time, which is something I never expected, like, it's almost like I hit a lottery, because that doesn't happen with a free healthcare service. So many things was going on, but the one thing that came out that was I can't even repeat it, because let me not. But it really helped me cope at the time, and it was actually lucky that it happened at the time, because there was, anyway, let me.
Yeah, I had to turn off the testimony a couple times, because the Paul Bettany moment where they called him a drug buddy, it was like, you leave your body, because it was like, that was just a cheap shot.
Yeah.
And, because I was there for a guy, and it was the same thing. They came after me because it's triangulation. You want to separate the target from their friends, so they don't have a support system. There's no witnesses who can come forward and say, no, it was the other way around. He didn't abuse her. We saw her do things to him. They want to get those people away. It's too much trouble. And I had to stop. And I walk around my kitchen island. I don't know why, but you have to move to get back in your body. And I came back and I started again, but I was just like, that dude is not part of this. He didn't ask to be a part of this. He was just trying to support a friend. Don't do that. The assumption, the jumping to conclusions that they hate women or they're a bad person instead of a hurt person, that was something I think the media did fuel.
Terrible. Yeah.
And that's where I can land blame, because Amber Heard's probably mentally ill. I'm not going to blame her. I'm not going to blame Johnny Depp. He's got his demons, his addiction, his own things. He was humiliated to get his name back. So he's done his time as far as I'm concerned. But the media, it was exploitative. And there should have been a better ethical bar. So-called news organizations acted like tabloids on that one. And the behavior of paid journalists online was terrible while they were going after YouTubers who don't have the similar professional ethical burden, right? They were going, well, you're so bad and you're this. I didn't see them behaving any better. I saw them engaging in speculation. I saw them jumping to conclusions. I saw them engaging in facts, not in evidence, and putting things together in ways that actually weren't provable. And they have the burden. Right? Somebody wants to be a jerk. That wasn't what I wanted to say, but on YouTube, it's YouTube. You don't have the weight and the heft of a major news organization behind you on YouTube.
Ironically,
that matters.
I will say this on closing, because I do have to close off now. I will say this on closing. I will give credit to Amber Heard, where it could have been a situation where she's like, oh, like retaliating abuse, and then she was like, this is how I was feeling because I was literally in that dynamic, and it was so. But I mean, that said, and I'm giving her a lot of credit by even saying that, those cases are so few in number that it's something you would expect from being captive to Josef Fritzl all your life, for example. Like that's just, it's not even me saying it or trying to speculate, it's what studies actually show. They have done extensive studies on this.
And I think a lot of people, I think the media narrative was totally wrong on whether she was believed at the time. I think a lot of people did believe her at the time because Johnny Depp's a well-known train wreck. I think people got angry because they were fooled, that they believed her, and then the tape about her hitting him came out. The tape about her slapping him came out, that you weren't punched, you were hit. And then lying about giving money to a children's charity, that was it. Rightly or wrongly, that was it. People were angry. They were personally offended. People don't like to be fooled. People blame themselves when they're fooled. And when people start blaming themselves, oh God, I believe false accusations against a guy, you get the internal spiral. I just didn't do a bad thing. I'm a bad person. Oh God, I'm everything I claim to not like. That externalizes because people can't handle it. And yeah, people are going to go full bore at Amber Heard and her supporters and any sympathetic journalists. Of course.
Yeah.
The only people in that equation where that is actually part of the job are the journalists. And I say that as somebody who's been there.
It's been lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me, Liana Kerzner. Do check her out on our YouTube channel. Is it Boss Fight? No.
It's Liana K on
Liana
YouTube.
K.
Red Liana
What's
K.
Boss
My
Fight,
podcast is my podcast is It's Not Therapy. Boss Fight started as a web series, but it's turned into a video game called Song of Sparkle Muffin that we're working on getting the demo out for now. So if you go on my YouTube and check out Boss Fight, I play like 14 different characters, and it's all this fairy tale. It's based around a Princess Peach type heroine who is just really nice. And yeah, I play a bunch of different characters in that. So check it out if you want to laugh, or, check out the game. Song Sparkle is the Twitter handle for the game, or you can check out It's Not Therapy. It's available. It's on a local radio station, but worldwide, anywhere you get your podcasts. It is on the SiriusXM podcast network if you're a subscriber to that. But you'll get a better sense of where I'm at in the mental health component from that show, because that's been a lifetime journey with that one. And again, I hope that anybody who was affected by this has some hurt feelings. Please reach out and talk to people. Some people will get it. People will believe you. Not everybody, but some people will. And anybody who doesn't, and you're telling the truth, they're not your people. They're just not. And it's better to find out and get away from them than live in this like swamp of backbiting and half-truths and lies. I had to get away from a social group like that. It was the best thing I've ever done.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much, Liana, for joining me for this.
No problem. Thank you for having me.